This talk will be on Wicked Officials and Virtuous Martyrs, Narratives of Persecution in Alexius Hwang Sayong's Silk Letter. I originally gave this talk at the 2010 Association for Asian Studies annual meeting in Philadelphia. It's interesting, I think, because I actually gave this talk on March 26th, which is the day, the 100th anniversary of the day An Chung-gun, one of the other people I study, was executed. So I thought that was an interesting coincidence. This presentation is actually based on a paper I wrote that was published in the July 2009 issue of Kyohoesa Yon'gu, which is a Korean journal on Catholic Church history. And if anyone is interested in having a copy of that article, which of course I go into a lot more detail than in this talk, in that article, I would be happy to send it. Now in 1801, Alexius Hwang Sayong wrote the Silk Letter, so named because it was written on a piece of silk, as you can see in this picture here. This letter was addressed to the Bishop of Beijing in response to the 1801 anti-Catholic persecution. Basically, this was this was the most severe persecution the Catholics had yet to endure up to that point. And this persecution had in fact cost the life of the only priest in Korea, the Chinese priest Father James Jo-wen-mo. So in this letter, Hwang Sayong made several proposals for obtaining tolerance and a new priest. And the focus of studies on the Silk Letter have been on these proposals because of their shocking nature. There's two in particular that many people, especially if they come from a Korean nationalist perspective, find rather disturbing. In the first of these, Hwang suggested that the Chinese emperor basically make Korea into a protectorate. And that would have led to the basically the end of Korea essentially as an independent country. Even probably more disturbing to many people today, and especially also at the time, was that Hwang also asked that the Pope attempt to get the countries of the West to join together to send an armada of 50 to 60,000 elite troops in several score warships to actually invade Korea and force the king at gunpoint to basically allow a new priest to come into the country and to tolerate Catholicism. And because of the rather shocking and disturbing nature of these proposals to many people that have studied this, the fact that the martyr biographies that the Silk Letter contains have largely been neglected. Now, these martyr biographies have been used as primary sources. In fact, the Silk Letter is a very important primary source because it's one of the few that is actually written from the viewpoint of a Catholic as opposed to the government. So it's important in that way, but for the most part, the Silk Letter has been mined for raw data, or the martyr biographies rather have been mined for raw data, but not really analyzed in and of themselves. And I think this is something that needs to be addressed because the martyr biographies are important for several reasons. One is in part because they help to justify intervention in Korea. Hwang, as we shall see, presented the story of the martyrs in a way to justify the use of violence, even to bring tolerance, religious tolerance for Catholicism. Similarly, the Silk Letter shows how Catholicism threatened the state and why the Choson state, was so brutal and violent in its suppression of the foreign religion. And in addition, I will contend that the Silk Letter the martyr biographies contain the Silk Letter, might have helped the Catholic Church to endure persecution. The Choson state's ruling ideology or religion, depending on how you view it, was Neo-Confucianism, and it basically constituted state orthodoxy. And Neo-Confucianism claimed to be able to teach people the true way, basically the truth, in order to make them moral. And part of realizing the way, realizing the truth, and making people moral in Neo-Confucianism is ritual. Basically, by conducting the correct rituals, the people will become more moral. So, for example, by performing correct ancestor rites, not only do you become more virtuous, not only do you express your filial piety towards your parents, you actually become more filial. Now, because the rites and rituals are so important, and the state's job as a Neo-Confucian state is to realize the true morality and this true way, it has the ability to claim what is called ritual hegemony, and this is a term coined by Professor Don Baker. Now, this idea of ritual hegemony means that the state gets to determine who can perform what rituals, when, and where, and who's not allowed to perform those same rituals. And also what's tied to this is the idea that truth brings real results. By having the true way, by having the true Neo-Confucian way, you know what proper rituals perform, you know how to act, that will bring true morality and the realization of the sage kingdoms that is what Neo-Confucianism promised to bring. So I want to stress here is that Neo-Confucianism had this idea that there's only one truth, and that truth is the Neo-Confucian way. Well, now this is a big problem when Catholicism comes in. For one thing, the Catholics claimed to have their own truth. They claimed that their religion, their orthodoxy, was true. Moreover, they refused to perform ancestor rites, and they performed a different ritual, authorized not by the king, who claimed to be ritual hegemon, but by the Pope, and this ritual would be the Mass, and also to a lesser extent confession and other Catholic sacraments. So they challenged ritual hegemony. They said to the state, we're going to perform what rituals we think we need to when we want to. And this was a direct contradiction to the claims of the state. Moreover, because the state claimed to spread these true rituals, to spread the truth, it's placed itself as the moral teacher of society, of the Korean people. Catholicism, by challenging this truth, by challenging ritual hegemony, also challenged the status as moral teacher, which made Catholicism very dangerous. The first Catholics, Korean Catholics, appear in 1784 in Korea, and they had their first martyr by 1785. However, the state did not, under King Jeongjo, did not want to have a major persecution of Catholics yet, for various reasons. There was a fear that this would be persecuting too much would disturb the security of the state. As a Confucian state, it didn't really want to kill people unless it was really forced to. Moreover, a lot of the Catholics were also members of a political faction that King Jeongjo supported, and he was worried that a persecution of Catholics would lead to attacks on these people and the loss of his allies. Now, and so there was only very limited persecutions after 1785. Now, what sort of made things difficult was a priest, Father James Jo Win Mo, a Chinese man, came into Korea in 1794, or 1795, depending on whether you go by the Western or Eastern calendar. And the discovery of a foreign priest in the country led to an increase increase in persecution, and at the same time the presence of this priest led to an increase in the number of Catholics, because now Catholics could take part in the sacraments, and so their religion was actualized more. So in 1791 there were about 1,000 Catholics. In 1794 there were 4,000, and by 1801 there was 10,000. So this number of Catholics is going up, and this is very disturbing to the government, which is in fact what helps lead to the 1801 persecution. And what's interesting about this persecution is that in 1801 is that it's so much more intense than the previous persecutions. More people are killed, and in addition, the geographic scope is much wider. And also there's a change in targets. Before 1801, no women are known to have been killed in any of the persecutions. There's no women among the martyrs. In 1801, for the first time, the government actually tortures and kills women. This is a major shift. And Catholicism is treated essentially as treason. It's declared treason in 1801, and Catholics are executed as traitors, which means that their heads are cut off and their families can even be liable for punishment, but this wasn't always extended. So this is thus a very serious issue in the view of the state.